Hi, I'm Tony McMahon. You've probably seen me on various history documentaries on TV, and I have a very strong interest in medieval history. I'm in the middle of writing 3 books at the moment on the Knights Templar. And what I wanted to talk to you today about is how 700 years ago there was an attempted female takeover of the Roman Catholic Church. There was a cult in Italy led by a woman called Guglielma, and when she died, her followers believed that she would resurrect, that she would come back, and this would initiate a takeover of the church by women. When this happened, with the assistance of the Holy Spirit, it was believed that the leader of the cult, a woman called Maifreda of Pirovano, would become the new pope. There would be a female pope in the Vatican. Now, when news of this cult reached the ears of Pope Boniface VIII, he was absolutely furious, and he unleashed the Inquisition against these women. He took the threat of what these women were suggesting very seriously. Let's go back and take a look at this woman Guglielma, who founded the cult. Now, she was bigger in a way in death than she was in life, but when the Inquisition started to interrogate her followers after she died, they told stories about what she had done in life, and they said that she had performed miracles. She'd restored the sight of one man. She'd cured a fistula in another man. She was capable of great miraculous works and was clearly imbued with saintliness and with the power of the Holy Spirit. She had almost divine power. Of course, this was completely heretical from the point of view of the Roman Catholic Church. It's interesting that the church, that the Pope was quite slow to act initially. This may be because they just didn't hear about this cult until a little while later, but within the area where she was operating, near to Milan, she became very popular. And even local priests, local monks, joined the cult and supported it. When Guglielma died in 1281, she was buried initially in a small church, but then later exhumed, and she was processed through the streets with a huge crowd, including the local nobility. And she was taken eventually to a Cistercian abbey at Chiaravalle, where the monks lovingly anointed her body and then buried it in a very impressive tomb inside the abbey. Over her tomb there was a fresco which depicted Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, who had been a Cistercian monk who had advocated for the Knights Templar, a hugely influential figure, one of the founders of the Cistercian order. And this fresco showed him presenting Guglielma to the Virgin Mary in heaven. So think about it. We have the leader of a cult of women who believe that women must take over the Catholic Church. And there are even sections of the church who are supporting this. So much so that Guglielma has been put in this beautiful tomb with this amazing fresco, and it becomes a pilgrimage site. And nobody in Milan and among the Cistercian monks seems to have a problem with this. And this is even though it was declared by her followers that when she was coming back from the dead, there would be new female-oriented gospels, new female laws, and a female pope. By 1300, however, Pope Boniface VIII had heard about the cult, and he was mad as hell. What he did was he sent the Dominican friars up to Milan to sort this out. Now, the Dominicans were the leading operators within the Inquisition. They enforced the Inquisition, and they went up there to crush this cult, to arrest its members, and to destroy it absolutely. But from the Pope's point of view, he must have been asking himself what on earth was going on around Milan, that people were following the memory of this woman and believing that the church had to be led by a woman. We know that 33 members of the cult were put on trial by the Inquisition, and that included Maifreda of Pirovano. And they were not particularly repentant. I mean, they defended their beliefs and what they thought needed to happen to the church. 3 of them, Maefreda and 2 others, were sentenced to be burned to death at the stake. This was a punishment for the worst of heretics, was done in public and was done as an example to anybody else who dared to defy the power of the Roman Catholic Church. But of course there was the small matter of Guglielma's tomb in the local Cistercian abbey. Well, the Dominican friars in the Inquisition went up to the abbey and demanded that her body be dug up and the tomb destroyed. Once her body had been dug up, Guglielma's remains were then taken to the same public square and they were burned in public as well. This was an astonishing time in Europe. We can already see the beginning of the witchcraft mania that would explode in the 15th century for 200-300 years. It's something that I write about in a forthcoming book, Downfall of the Templars, which will be out in November 2025. You can also read my current book on the Templars. I'm writing 3 books on them at the moment, which is The Knights Templar History and Mystery, where I also cover some of these themes. There was a lot of concern about sorcery, witchcraft, necromancy, and this was all becoming combined with the whole question of heresy. People who opposed the church were increasingly being cast as diabolists, as witches, and so this cult, we see them treated really in the same way as witches. They're treated as agents of Satan, masquerading as legitimate Christians, and then they are burned at the stake. A terrible end for this cult, but it didn't stop similar cults from arising. But this is certainly a unique example, this idea of a female takeover of the church. Well, today, as you know, the Catholic Church is nowhere nearer to admitting women to the highest ranks of its organisation, certainly not to becoming Pope. So I hope you found this interesting. I hope you remember Guglielma, we all should do, as an icon of feminism in the Middle Ages. Thanks for listening and watching. Goodbye for now.